peace. Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? It's a nice concept. I love the moral high ground from people. Now, I don't want war. I'm anti-war. Okay, who's pro-war? Who's a no? There are just some of us that believe war is not the enemy. It should be the last resort. Yeah. Well, war didn't solve anything. Communism, fascism, yeah, it actually did. Nazism, pardon me. Throw that too. Want to take a good look at the good of what, or the confrontation and what happens? North Korea, South Korea. Two very different visions, pardon me, of the forgotten war. When you look at that, I mean, it just amazes me. 9/12/2001. Oh, I can't believe what were we doing? Just not fighting. I mean, they were. Why didn't we stop it? Why didn't we do anything? I just want to get those guys. All the emotion in the world, and I understand it because I felt it, but not in that vein. I wanted to defeat our enemy. I wanted to target nation states that went after us and organizations that went after us, and I wanted to end them. I wanted to humiliate them because that would save lives, and I wanted to recognize that a Judeo-Christian foundation fundamentally is superior in culture because it respects the freedom of the individual, that our rights come from God. And we shouldn't be afraid of saying that. It shouldn't be a one mention like Matthew McConaughey at the Oscars. It should be something we remind ourselves of daily. The fact is that if we live biblically, we are on the right track, to say the least. Thank you, Captain Understatement. Yes, where's Captain Obvious? He'll be here. Bottom line, we are seeing once again how theory and dismissiveness are reconciling with reality. The theory that we can ascribe the values of others that we have to others, pardon me. We can have peace in our time. That idea. I don't think I don't think Israel's Czechoslovakia in this way. I pray that we don't marginalize it in an attempt to. But the way we are playing on the world stage, it's actually what our good friend who is head of the Intel Committee, I say our good friend, I just like him. Oh, it's about R. I bet he's done R. You're a Republican guy, aren't you? No. He happens to be a Republican. He happens to take over for, actually, a good friend of the show was Pete Hoekstra. That guy's awesome. But I don't care if he's a Republican or not. I care if he makes sense and he advances policies that, make sense in that way. Your vote, your business. It's R's or D's. It's about accountability. And people in the parties are not above human nature. So I just look for the policy and I look for truth and I say, whoa, I'm going to advance that because I believe in that. Or I'm going to advance it by telling the truth about it and exposing the lies that have been said about it or written about it. So we get to what is now a cry for help, in essence, from the Ukrainian ambassador. And he spoke with Candy Crawley yesterday. And this is really interesting because Candy Crawley is asking him about what he needs and what he's looking for. And even in broken English, it's pretty clear that he needs our support. And that's not just in the sense of threatening sanctions, economic. He's looking for our support. So with that in mind, I give you the ambassador. Roll it.
We are to demonstrate that we have our own capacity to protect ourselves, as it was decided today in the Parliament, and we are preparing to defend ourselves. And naturally, if aggravation is going in that way, when the Russian troops they are enlarging their quantity with every coming hour, naturally we would be we'll ask for military support and other kind of the support.
Yuri Sergeyev, and yeah, he's looking for support and backup because at the end of the day, How are you going to deal with someone who uses violence and troops? You're going to say, this is just so 19th century of you. It really is. I mean, it's even actually 20th century of you. I mean, get with the program. Don't you know human nature evolves? Don't you get it? I mean, we're just not this place. Let's go have a cup of coffee. Calm, cool reasoning. You've got to check out the Bunny Hidden. Buddy Hidden, Brady Bunch, posted on the Facebook. Lesson in Diplomacy. We move now to what Mike Rogers, the man I was speaking of on the House Intel, chairman of the House Intel Committee, said about our current policy toward, or excuse me, we don't go there. We actually go to President Obama in 2009. Now, the reason I play this is when his first meeting with Medvedev and President Obama is announcing the fact of how he can press the reset button and advance arms reductions because we have a partner in our good friend, the president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev. This is Obama 2009. Roll it.
We've just concluded a very productive meeting, as President Medvedev just indicated. The President and I agreed that the relationship between Russia and the United States has suffered from a sense of drift. We resolved to reset U.S.-Russian relations so that we can cooperate more effectively in areas of common interest. Today, after less than 6 months of collaboration, we've done exactly that by taking concrete steps forward on a range of issues while paving the way for more progress in the future. And I think it's particularly notable that we've addressed the top priorities. These are not second-tier issues. They are fundamental to the security and the prosperity of both countries. First, we've taken important steps forward to increase nuclear security and to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. This starts with the reduction of our own nuclear arsenals. As the world's two leading nuclear powers, the United States and Russia must lead by example, and that's what we're doing here today. We have signed a joint understanding for a follow-on treaty to the START agreement that will reduce our nuclear warheads and delivery systems by up to 1/3 from our current treaty limitations. This legally binding treaty will be completed this year.
We will tactically disarm ourselves. We will disarm our allies. Hey, I didn't mention the Czech Republic and Poland in that clip, but yeah, we bailed on the missile shield at them. Yeah, what we're going to do is set an example for the rest of the world and disarm. Meanwhile, Russia is getting oil for nuclear advances in Iran. Reuters reporting. I mean, come on. Again, it's wonderful. I'm going to bring peace. I'm going to disarm us, and we're going to set the example. See, if Al-Qaeda realizes if they go through the system here in America, even though they don't qualify for that and should never, Geneva Conventions, I think it's 3, possibly 4, but that because of the non-traditional combatants, enemy combatants that they are, they don't subscribe to the rules of war. They don't qualify for that status, and they 30% rate that we can catch, that we can actually find when they're released from Gitmo, they end up back on the battlefield. Because of all that, we're going to set the example for the rest of the world. See, we're actually good. I don't need to, Mr. President. We don't need to prove ourselves to the rest of the world. The world is free because the United States liberated them. You look at the world and you say, well, why is this place free? Probably because the American soldier put themselves on the line, blood and treasure, and liberated them. Because during the paradigm of mutually assured destruction, don't have that with radical Islam, we had the Cold War, which we had proxy fights. And there were communists, and there were those that supported freedom. And there are those regimes kind of in the gray area where we had to work and had to face the reality and advance the best we could at the time. Iran-Iraq war, for example. Remember Reagan's line, can't they both lose? But we realize that there are choices to be made, and it's about advancing freedom, because free countries won't go to war with each other. And that's true peace in the sense of the Cold War paradigm of what we were going with. that model. That's what we're yielding. That's what we're going for. Then the end of the Cold War. Hey, it's in the Cold War. Great. Let's haul out our military. We really don't need this anymore. Let's haul out our military while we're still fighting wars. Okay, that's President Obama's approach. But we all had to pay for that because then you have to rebuild it. Incidentally, constitutionally, look at what it's commanded for the federal government to do, and that's defend us. So, primary responsibility. It's not a welfare state as we know it. Some of you have taken exception to the idea I use the term welfare state. Well, you do pay into the programs, absolutely. I do too. But on average, you get $120,000 out more than you pay in. Now, you can call it whatever you want. I'm just facing the economic reality. I'm also facing the reality that Americans don't trust themselves with their own money, that they're willing to go and forego, quite frankly, their money for Social Security and Medicare care, realizing that they're not entitled to that. Yeah. Fleming versus Nestor? Yeah. Social Security, you don't have a constitutional right to it. And you're going to trust the government that's $17 trillion in the hole rather than you being responsible for yourself. What about the people in need? Local. Church. Yeah, that's where we step in, not the federal government. But I digress. Greater point here. President Obama is advancing the idea that we'll disarm, we'll show everybody. This is obviously a worldview that we haven't shown everybody, that we've been dismissive, even derisive in the way we've handled things. We rushed to war with 17 UN resolutions against Saddam Hussein. I bring this up because there are commentators saying we really don't have a lot of standing talking about President or Vladimir Putin and Russia invading Crimea and then full on going forward, and the concerns about that, because we've invaded other countries too. Well, that is like saying the person that it's totally taking out any type of context. It's like saying Crane Durham killed this man, and that's a murder. He murdered this guy. Not mentioning the fact that the guy had the audacity to knock on my door, break into my house, and then I shot him because I wanted to protect my family, and I will. It's taking out the context. Isn't that'd be self-defense. Yeah, and there's preemptive self-defense, by the way. I'm just speaking in general here as well as 1973 for Israel. Bravo. So I am looking at these things, and I'm saying apply context, apply reality. Mike Rogers did weigh in on how we are handling the situation in the Ukraine. And here's how he summed up Putin versus Obama, or the United States versus Russia, in regard to our policies and foreign policy strategies. Roll it.
Well, I think Putin is playing chess, and I think we're playing marbles. And I don't think it's even close. So if you look at the nuclear negotiations, we got our fannies handed to us. They took tactical nukes out of the equation. Huge mistake, especially for our allies in the Baltics. When you move down the list in Syria, the Russians got everything that they needed, they believed they needed in Syria. And so they've been running circles around us, and I think it's really the naive position on the National Security Council and the President's advisors that if we just keep giving things to Russia, they'll finally wake up and say, boy, the United States isn't all that bad. That is completely missing the motivations of why Russia does what Russia does. And again, they have an interest in expanding their buffer zones by influence, I don't think by Russian occupation, but by influence in cases like the Crimea, I think Moldova next, and other places, that it's in their interest to continue to push out that buffer zone. And by the way, the big one that started this was the absolute retreat on our missile defense system in Poland and Czechoslovakia. Caused huge problems for our allies and emboldened the Russians, and it really has been a downhill slide since.
And it has been a downhill slide. Now, there is an interview that's covered by Elliot Abrams in the Weekly Standard and his analysis. It is shocking because it's an interview that was done with Bloomberg, and the reporter from Bloomberg, actually, Jeffrey Goldberg, does a great job in this interview following up with President Obama of what we learn is it's entitled, "If He Believes It, It Must Be So, Obama's Scary Interview." And I might just get an interview with Elliott Abrams at some point, try to get him on to talk about this. It's just fascinating because the president displays, he's not naive. He's just he's deluded. And it's almost as if when he's giving a speech on Obamacare and the successes, he totally ignores the record coming in. It's somebody telling you 2 + 2 = 5. And even if he has people that are supportive of the administration, he tries to rewrite their history and their comments to fit his own. Don't all politicians do that? Not to this degree, and not to this degree in the amount and when it involves different issues, be it domestic or with foreign policy. That is to say that we have a president who's not in touch with reality. And many of us are facing reality, the reality of a weak foreign policy and leading from behind. Our soldiers have been facing that reality, and they deserve better. AFR Talk.